human surgery, get IRB approval to go into a live human surgery, ideally in prostate, if you know, because that's kind of where that's somewhere where the complication has high medical impact, and therefore high medical need. I try to get into live, anything short of live tissue just isn't going to tell you what you need to know. And what happened with Da Vinci?
Well, but I mean, the prototype we built, it was a seed funding they do for technology innovation. They want to see, you know, it being reduced into a smaller size and being a stable, you know, instrument. We got to do one trial only on animals. They probably want to see more experiments performed to be convinced that it's actually worth investing more. You know. But they are on the lookout. Other groups were looking into photoacoustic and lifetime imaging for.
No, it makes all the sense in the world, especially in the prostatectomy setting.
Which is 80% of the market. Thank you.
Yeah, I try to get into a live surgery, and I don't know what setting I would do that in. You know, ideally you want to be able to tell nerve tissue from non-conducting tissue, right?
Yeah, I guess what's more, I think the nice thing is that there's, at least we talked with a surgeon here at USC, and a nice idea is that the robot actually has an access port that you can put in your own camera, right? So you're not relying on the system, you can actually put your own scope in and visualize on another screen what that stuff is. So as we talk it through though, you know, what's the controls either, you know, so you have some assessment, so it's either do you inform the clinician of that location, and how do you judge if they make a mistake and correlate it to the image?
Yeah, that would be the ultimate, right?
Yeah.
But maybe intermediate to that is just being able to show that you can image things that aren't obvious to the naked eye. And I'm just trying to think of a really good setting to do that. Maybe hand surgery where the nerves are really exposed, but then the volume of procedures is really low for that.
So something where you have a strong visual control that says I can directly confirm what's happening versus my detection mechanism, which is, okay, yeah, because the benefit of this technology is supposed to be the one where you can't easily see with your eyes, but you want to control against what you
I mean,
can,
ideally,
so that way you know it's working.
ideally you'd want to do that. I just don't know how you do that in a real life setting. Unless you do it in surgeries on animals and prove a lower complication rate for something that's challenging. Like pick an animal surgery that's challenging and would have, because of the inability to distinguish the different types of tissues, a high complication rate, and then show that somebody using something like this doesn't have those issues. I just don't know what that procedure would be. I don't think about that.
Well, you seem to know about every single thing in so far. Just kidding.
Got me on that. I have to think about that experimental design a little bit, how you do that in a really convincing way. But I would definitely say something alive. I mean, in a real life open prostatectomy, do you think they'd let you come in?
Yes. Well, they have 6 trocars on the body, and they use only 5.
So you could actually
yes. As long as it's something sterile.
Oh wow, that's great. If you could actually get a port.
Yes.
During the prostatectomy, do they, as they're dissecting the tissue, do they come upon the nerve, or can they sort of see it?
Well, they go by experience. So the more experienced the doctor, and the higher your functionality afterwards, potentially. And he's like top surgeons in US, and he has 80% functionality.
And if your IP and novelty here is dependent on certain wavelengths, I would also show in that experiment that wavelengths that aren't covered by your intellectual property do not work as well, or at all. And I don't know if that's possible to do through that one port that you're borrowing during a surgery or not. But just something else to consider.
Well, if I know what I need to do, I will do it. You know.
You built a different box with different wavelengths, or you could flip a switch and get different wavelengths and actually show the images between your set of wavelengths and what somebody else has previously used in another device, because since these things are out there for sale already, then you'd be able to make the point that this is better than what's out there as a state-of-the-art. You may not want to see that result, but it's important to know. You know, if the image looks exactly the same, you know, you want to spend 10 years on it.
Yeah.
I tried to develop a blood test for early diagnosis of my traumatic brain injury, TBI.
This would be blood?
I use blood. Yeah, because the diagnosis of TBI is a big challenging issue, because right now there's no approved test, blood test for TBI. There's a couple of protein
In what
markers.
setting? Are we talking football players? Are we talking car accidents?
Car
What-
accident.
What level of TBI are we thinking about?
Is when gentle TBI, the early diagnosis. It cannot be diagnosed by CT and MRI. If it's very severe TBI, it's pretty easy diagnosed by another test like MRI. But the early, it's a very minor one. It's a gentle change. It cannot be detected in the early phase.
So if there's no method right now for the early detection of TBI, how will you know whether yours is working?
The one we are trying to develop a cell-based biomarker. The cells from the blood-brain barrier called brain macrovascular endothelial cells can shift from blood-brain barrier (BBB) and then into the blood, and then we use immunomicrobeads to pull down the cells and to quantify the numbers.
How is TBI, how is mild TBI diagnosed now?
Just a behavior test.
Okay, so what you have to show is that because behavioral testing is used to set the therapeutic course and make therapeutic decisions for treatment of the TBI, then you have to show that your marker correlates to the same result that a behavioral test would do. Because otherwise, you're just showing a marker that nobody knows what to do with the data, unless you correlated it to the same test that they use to make decisions now. So I would think that this is a pretty easy killer experiment, because all you have to do is show that you would have predicted the same as the behavioral testing did, right? But that's kind of a necessary part of this, because if people are using behavioral testing to decide what to do with a patient, and you give them a marker that tells them what to do with the patient, and you will have to build the correlation between your marker and the testing that they do now, which will be behavioral. Short of that, there's probably other killer experiments that have to be done, but that's the ultimate one. Do you have the marker?
Yeah, I have the marker.
How do you know that it's only released during a mild TBI?
We haven't done my figure. We tested a few samples from the patients compared with normal people. There's a significant change.
So you have retrospective data from people who you know have mild TBI, and then you
Yeah.
had their blood and you found the marker, and then
Yeah.
normal, they don't have the marker.
Yeah, we tested two sides. One is we buy the commercial, that's the specimen. Did they
Your
hear?
blood samples?
Yeah, blood samples. Also, the other one done in China, you want to a big brain traumatic hospital.
So one important experiment to do for convincing people that this works is to have the samples blinded. And I would probably do the whole thing in an outside lab, where somebody sends to them samples that are blinded normal and mild TBI blood samples, and let them show how many of those they catch. And I guess the control is built in because they've already been diagnosed, right? As having a mild TBI.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, and if somebody relies on this to make therapeutic decisions, and you give a false positive, what are the consequences to that for the patient? So you run your test, you say they're positive for TBI, and they're actually not. What are the consequences of that for the patient? What treatment do they go through that they wouldn't have?
There's no, actually, there's no treatment for TBI.
But they're put on inactivity, right? Like they're
Yeah.
said, don't go back riding your bike or doing, they're-
Well, if there's no
Yeah.
treatment,
something.
why do the test?
For all the treatment trials are failed in the past 20 years.
Okay, so what decision would this information change?
So there's undiagnosed, but the very minor injury. If the injury is very obvious, it can treatment or surgery or some interventions.
Is some of the issue undiagnosed mild TBI, whereas the behavioral test might miss it, but your technology would pick it up? Is that part of what you're aiming
What's
for?
wrong with behavioral testing?
Behavioral testing, yeah, just tell the patients not do more exercise, just feel home, not but feel some more.
I think I would, I'd be pretty focused on it at this point. First of all, establishing that there's a value for this, that it actually changes the way a patient's going to be treated, with an end of improving the outcome. So if you can't prove better outcomes, nobody's going to spend the money on doing the test. And if it doesn't change the way they treat the patient, they're not going to pay for a test. And I would focus right now just on that value. If you can convince yourself that there's a value to the diagnosis, the next question is it equivalent to behavioral testing in efficacy? And is equivalent good enough for a reason to spend money on developing the product? Maybe it's cheaper than having a behavioral psychologist do a quick test. Maybe it's more expensive, I don't know. If there's a behavioral psychologist who's already on staff at a hospital being paid full time, you're not saving the hospital any money by having a quicker way of doing this that doesn't involve a behavioral test. So I think pretty hard about what the value is here and what somebody would do with this information. And then if you're convinced there's a value, then I think the test is proving equivalency against the standard. Because ultimately that's what you're going to have to show before they use it if they're making treatment decisions based on that information. It's going to have a real tight correlation to their current decision gate, which is behavioral. I wonder, if there's a use for it in a head injury setting in sports. Because right now the testing is so subjective with the vestibular testing and everything you do on a sideline to try to establish whether or not there's been a head injury or a concussive injury. And I'm just kind of wondering if this would actually have a place there. Because if you could just take a quick finger prick of blood and say, well, that person is likely to have a head injury versus not, maybe a value to that. So is the novelty here the marker? Is that what's the TIP?
This is a CHLA, so it's our affiliated hospital.
I think it's the particular marker on the brain microvascular endothelial cell that ends up in the peripheral blood when there's central damage. But, yeah, the IP spousal CHL makes them.
Doesn't have to. I think it, you know, I think you may find more of a reception for that kind of test, maybe in a sports injury setting, than in a, you know.
The clinical PI on this one, I haven't met with him yet, but he's the head of critical care at USC. But I want to understand more about the clinical setting and what the needs are as well.
Even in the sports setting, I have trouble understanding the value of these tests that look for.
There was one in the SBIR CPI, right?
Yeah.
Forgotten where that
There was.
It combined multiple.
Is that at Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
And the question has always been, who pays for it and why do they pay for it?
Okay.
And how does it change the course of treatment?
It's gotta be
Because
that
it really
weird-
isn't a treatment.
It's really gotta be that weird case. I think like our sports analytics company is at USC that does data on athletes, and it's because it's worth the money because a small number of people have a lot of money at stake, so they're not willing to pay for it. So the question here is, the NFL as a league or professional leagues have enough financial interest in their athletes that they pay some exorbitant amount for a test that doesn't have commercial value in everybody else.
I think it would.
Yeah, and like, so choose making that decision, or if it becomes a players' union compelling thing, right, that requires, like, there's a player safety, but the economics can't have to get ratcheted down significantly if you apply to college athletics or to high school athletics.
Especially high school, and then
So-
once you get into the professional sports, there's kind of a zero tolerance for false positives because the cost of losing an athlete when there's not really an injury is extremely high.
Right.
And I think there's even I've heard, maybe they just don't want that data.
Better not to know.
Better not to know. You know, when there's that much money at stake,
Yeah.
sometimes they just don't want to know.
Yeah, the other company works because it's eking out extra performance and unlocking value of people. This is kind of the opposite of risk averse.
And a lawsuit 20 years from now is not as expensive as losing the player today.
There's another problem. Yes, maybe the potential killer experiment. There's new discovery that lympholytic circulation system in the brain and central nervous system. Is they find this system by University of Rochester. The system can sense minor problem like sleeping order or some drug can affect the molecular marker like S100B, and the US those marker already been tested by some company. They demonstrate in the animal model. If the animals is not sleeping well, and then the marker, you can not see any difference between the TBI animal and the normal animal. And you just see the same. So can explain why those molecular marker doesn't work for prediction of TBI injuries. Right now, for the cell-based marker we have, may not depend on this system. If it's depend on the system, we will not see the difference. If some things like a sleeping order disorder or some drug or something may affect the level of biomarker in the bloodstream.
Well, if there's something out there that doesn't work, that's a nice control too.
Mm-hmm.
Prove that you're better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big question is still, what do you do with it? Anybody else?
So we are developing a diagnostic tool using 15 different gene sets in the metastatic unresectable liver cancer patients using a repurposed FDA-approved drug combination. And our killer experiment we are thinking is clinical trial using those diagnostic tool for those 15 gene up and down regulation to predict which patient is more responsive to the treatment. And the other control group is standard of care therapeutic treatment.
So your goal is to predict which patient's going to be a responder?
Yes, and which patient should be treated instead of standard of care. And
well, why can't you just go to a bank of blood samples and do a retrospective as a first?
Yes, we did circulating tumor cell number and signature analysis, plus the surgically resected samples RNA-seq and DNA-seq analysis. So we have a variety of patient data.
So you've already established that you can distinguish between patients that are known responders and patients that turned out to not
right,
respond.
and also we isolate those tumor cells and injected a mouse model to treat those mouse cancer model treated with those drug and with the RNA sequencing analysis. So we are thinking those killer experiments should be those clinical trial using the biomarker sorted group versus unsorted group, or in comparison to standard care therapeutic treatment.
I'm
Did you
confused.
say, yeah, I'm a bit confused. Did you say that you do have blood samples
Yes.
from patients that were treated with the combination therapy?
No,
Okay.
we don't have those combination.
Okay.
It's not the standard care, but FDA approved for both of drug. But we have never treated for combination treatment.
So you've done it in animal models?
Right,
Is
animal
xenograft
model.
based on the,
So you have a therapy that is a novel combination of
Yes.
existing therapies, and you have a way of predicting whether it's going to work or not. Is that right?
Right.
And the combination of those, what's your intellectual property? What's the invention?
Invention is this diagnostic tool to predict which patient is responsive or not responsive
To that combination.
Yes, standard care treatment fail most of the patients. So the value of this diagnostic tool is, instead of going to standard care, which will fail, we will pick up the patient, right
I
patient
see what
group
you did.
and,
Okay.
so it's like Uncle
That's why
DX,
you
it's
took
the
the cells
genetic
and put them into
signature.
the animals.
Right, but the novelty
Right.
is that particular genetic panel, just like Genomic Health's Uncle DX.
Yeah. And there's certainly a lot of interest in the industry to having companion diagnostics. Have you talked to anybody so that there's probably no intellectual property around the combination, right?
right, it's very old drug,
Okay.
retinic acid and HDAC inhibitor, so it's very well-known drug, but it's not used for liver cancer treatment.
And have you tested each of the drugs by themselves
Right.
in the same animal model?
Yes, same animal. Actually, the tumor growth is promoted, so
Okay.
only combination will kill those tumors. So that's
Maybe there is intellectual property there. If you wouldn't have expected the combination to work better than the individual drugs, there may be intellectual property. Or I don't know, is that?
Problem
that-
is, the
Yeah.
drugs are readily available, so retinoic acid and any HDAC inhibitor will do, as far as I understand the
Right.
technology, and so those are out there and doctors are free to prescribe them together, should they have a reason to do so, such as is indicated by their diagnostic test for.
So you could protect it with that's just talking about the enforceability, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
could you deliver it in some package or suite of optimal combination?
No, you don't, you deliver it with the diagnostic.
So you could do it that way. I think there's a way to protect it, have some value there. Because the novelty's there, when you're saying it's non-obvious.
Yeah, it's a
that's
surprise,
just-
right?
So I think you get that clean. But
Hmm.
owning the materials or getting that price premium like you want on a drug, I think, that's just to be
Are-
determined. But I guess you pass on the value of the diagnostic into that assay because you know you can get the drugs for cheap, so that you sign the value into the diagnostic.
Who would run that, who would pay for that clinical trial and why would they do it?
Right, so
That's
this would be a really big clinical trial.
Wouldn't it be one of the companies that already like because they'd be getting a new revenue model from repurposing a drug that now is generic, so they're probably making nothing into
Well, the two drugs would be from different companies, right?
Right, different
yeah.
companies.
Well, retinoic acid is definitely generic. And I don't know about the HDAC inhibitor that you tested.
It's Saha.
Saha, yeah. So I don't know if that's a generic or.
It's generic, so also.
I mean,
the old
HDAC
drug-
inhibitors have been around for a long time.
Right.
It seems like you did the killer experiment. You can't get a company to want to do that clinical trial?
No, we didn't talk about in detail, so we haven't proceeded yet.
Yeah, I don't know what they would want to see beyond what you did.
You recommend talking to the drug makers
I
or
would.
a company that's in the business of making companion diagnostics like Genomic Health or something like that?
I think I would. Yeah, genomic health would be a good one to start with. Because if I understand, you took cells from human patients, put it into the animals.
Right.
So you xenotransplanted the cells.
Exactly.
You tested in those animals a combination drug that worked on some and didn't work on others, and you were able to predict which ones it was going to work on and which ones it wouldn't.
Right,
Is that
gene
right?
signature is obviously different.
I don't know what else you would do short of a clinical trial. I'm just trying to think of who would do that clinical trial. So it's a novel combination of drugs that are both generic. It would probably have to be a diagnostics company to do that. I would think. I just don't know if they'd put out the money for it. I think it's a tough sell, but.
And I don't know.
They're gonna have
how-
to, because the one who makes the money on this is the diagnostic company, not the drug company. Except for that, they get to put the drug into a new indication.
Right, and the indication is HCC?
Right.
Hepatocellular,
Yeah.
smallish.
Yeah.
Well, in Asia, it's much bigger.
Yeah.
It's much more prominent in Asia. Maybe there's an Asian partnership with that.
Asian diagnostic company?
Yeah. Maybe. It's because the prevalence is so much higher for HCC.
And it wouldn't
Talk to the
make
diagnostic companies.
sense, it wouldn't make sense to treat all HCC patients with the combination. Did you say
Right.
it's the combination in some cases actually makes a worse outcome?
Right, in the animal model, actually,
Okay.
the tumor growth is increased.
Okay, so then you didn't just do it for everybody.
What percentage get better?
I think about 35%.
35% of the HCCs are responders.
Yes.
Yeah, that's worth having a diagnostic for. Still worth having a diagnostic.
Wouldn't
How about the others, cancer type, besides HCC, how about the pancreatic
cholangio-
and cholangio?
Cholangiocarcinoma doesn't work out, so we don't know why, but it's specific for liver cancer and hepatocellular carcinoma.
I'd be trying to sell it to a diagnostic.
if the drug's going to be very cheap because it's generic, two generics together, could all the value be put into the diagnostic? Because
Well, that's what I was saying, the only one who's gonna make any money on this is the diagnostic company is gonna make the most money. Then the drug company will make a little bit more
yeah.
because they're going into a new indication that it's not currently sold in, but HCCs are real small. It's just a small market, so it's not gonna drive a drug company a whole lot.
It was
Can't
like
raise the price on that part, because it'll raise the price on what they sell too. If it's an acid or if it's delivered by volume.
yeah.
Because you still want to price that indication.
I'd talk to some diagnostic companies and say, may not have to do any more work. So for the standard of care, what's the responder rate?
Responder rate is, in the 3 months, there is a response, but after 6 months or 1 year, the response rate is really low.
So there are no, you have a very low responder rate, even for the standard of care.
I mean, in the short term response, but in the long term.
All of them?
Not all of them, but more than like 70% of patients have recurrence problems.
70%.
Yes,
Okay.
5 year survival is very low, like 10%.
And can you distinguish between those, the 70% who recur and the ones who don't, using the standard of care?
Yes, I wish I could have done, but we don't have enough time frame for 5 years survival. We haven't tested.
Plus your animals don't
But 6 month survival we can test.
I'm just wondering if there's value to it in a current setting. If you could predict who's going to respond and who's not. You know, if somebody's not going to be a responder, then you just want to do the chemo.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yep. We have developed a hydrogel that works as a drug carrier and for sustained release. And our application, the first application is for glaucoma patients. Glaucoma patients use eye drops every day, and compliance is the big issue. So the idea is to load this gel. It's a thermal responsive gel. So in room temperature it's liquid. Once it rises in temperature, it becomes solid. And to release the drug in 2 to 3 months. That's the idea.
So lots of these out there. Extremely busy space.
I know. Yeah.
Whether it's nanocarbon tubes, whether it's hydrogel, whether it's a reservoir, you name it. People are out there doing it. What would the advantage here be above what's already been invented and?
Well, in the market, there's a lot of research. There's one company in phase 3 right now, and they face problems with retention of the plug. The idea is to use as a punctual plug, to put in a lacrimal duct. And so this company is like the one that's further along, and they have problems like keeping the plug in place.
I'm thinking more intravitreal stuff. I've just seen so many of these, and I think they all have the worthy cause of trying to find a 2 to 3 month release to get better compliance.
That's true.
Out of the patient. So I'm just wondering, the killer experiment for me would be to compare it to one of those.
Yeah, but our application is actually external to the eye. Yeah,
so this would sit
it's
where?
put in a punctual plug. It's actually the duct that connects your eyelid to the nose. So then it's going to release, instead of putting eye drops every day, the gel releases a small amount every day.
Where did I just see this? So I saw another one of these where it's inserted into the margin. So somebody's doing this, but I can't remember where I saw.
Yeah, there is a company
saw this.
I came across it too. There's a company, they're doing different drugs. Do you remember the name of the company?
Ocular
Maybe
Therapeutics.
for dry eye.
Sorry?
Ocular Therapeutics.
Yes.
Yeah, they also have a punctual plug. They're the ones with problem with retention. And so my question regarding the killer experiment is, we've done some pilot studies in vitro to show sustained release.
Is this a novel hydrogel?
The
or has it been in
backbone,
humans before?
it has been. The backbone has.
Okay.
Yeah.
The back? What do you mean the back?
They put some additives to it to control the release. If you use just the hydrogel that's out
That
there,
additive that they put into it, has that been in humans before?
it has. Yeah,
Is that a crosslinker?
I believe it is. I'm not the chemist. The
Well,
chemical
just if
part.
you're talking about changing release, it would seem to be body as a crosslinker.
Well, the reason I ask is that if all the elements have been in humans before, are under, a GRAS status, which stands for generally regarded as safe, then you could go right into humans with this. And I assume the drug that you're contemplating is already in use in humans?
Yeah, the idea is to use prostaglandins. They are the
Okay.
most
So you don't have anything new that you're putting into the human?
No. But I mean, the point for me is like to show good data to the industry in order to get like private research fund to go to the next level. So in vitro is enough, or maybe should we go for like an animal study? And if the animal studies,
You know how you answer that? You ask them.
yeah, I talked to them actually, but
What'd they say?
they weren't very clear. They talk about in vitro, so but
A couple of things you got to show. You have to show the release rate in vitro.
okay.
I don't know what the animal model is for glaucoma. Maybe in primates.
The dogs are good.
Dogs are a
Yeah.
good model. That's an accepted model by industry, or that's just
Yeah.
what's used in the literature.
I gotta ask that.
Yeah, I'd talk to industry and ask them what model they would find convincing. And how do they get the glaucoma onset in the dogs?
There's one breed that develops glaucoma.
It's a spontaneously developing glaucoma.
Or you can induce with laser. Pigs as well, you can do that.
Is that an accepted model? You gotta
Yeah.
talk to industry and ask them what they're gonna find convincing. Laser induced, I wouldn't find very convincing. I'd love to have some diabetic animal to do that in. I just don't know what the model would be. But best way to approach it is to ask industry. Say, hey, look, I have some funding to do an experiment. I can do it in animal. And do a little bit of in vitro work to show the kinetics. But if I'm going to do animal, what would you want to see?
Okay.
Because again, you don't want to do an experiment when nobody cares about
Yeah.
what you've done. And you need to convince that next person to put the money in. And they may have really different ideas about what's convincing compared to what's normally done in the literature. But as far as what you have to prove, there's a lot of intravitreal reservoir type things. There's
Yeah.
hydrogels, that are injectable, that set up there and elute the drug over time. So you have a lot of competition in that space. Every university I've worked with has some sort of long-term drug delivery in the eye,
Yeah.
with the interest really being around peptides right now. Next, it's a much more challenging thing to stabilize and deliver over time. But there is a lot of competition out there. And the nice thing about these companies is they see it all. Everybody's going to them with their ideas, and so they'll have a pretty good sense of what you need to show. Where the benchmark is now. There was another one that I just saw where they put something just inside the margin, and I don't even know if it was attached.
It's on the top. Is it like a corner?
Does
Does it look like a contact lens? A Morphex?
No.
It's not this
No,
one.
it sat down inside the lid,
Oh, okay.
and I don't even think it was attached. I think they either injected it there and it set up there, so it's just the form holds it in place, kind of like a compression fit. I can't remember. I just can't remember, but yeah, there's another hydrogel that sits topical.
Okay.
Okay, so my idea is a little bit different than everyone else's. In fact, it was a mobile app, so our cycle a little faster. We're in the healthcare space in that it's an on-demand healthcare delivery to your home. So it's mobile enabled, like on-demand, and we deploy nurse practitioners to a patient's home.
Based on what that app is saying?
Yeah, right, correct. And so our killer experiment, we believe, is the pilot program we want to release at USC. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's other sets for that.
What does the app
Do.
What information is it giving? the
So,
caregiver?
you want like a walkthrough of like how it works, or?
Just what information is being transmitted that tells a caregiver it's time to go.
So it's like kind of like Uber. Let's say, so they request it via like you can put in your symptoms, or you can just request it the first person available, first NP available.
So it's a request.
Yes.
To see somebody.
Yes.
Okay. And what what is the advantage of that, especially for an older person who tends to be uncomfortable with technology? They like to pick up the phone.
So we do acknowledge that we're trying to figure out the elderly space right now. I'm talking to a company in the East that specializes in educating the elderly with technology, but right now our target customer targets are mainly like students and the young working professionals, busy moms, and that people are more tech savvy, I suppose, and they would value the convenience of having healthcare delivered to them, like having a provider come to them, right? So our pilot program was going to be at USC and in downtown LA, like a 5-mile radius. We wanted to launch in Orange County if successful.
Okay, so an Uber.
Yeah.
An Uber for healthcare. And are there practitioners who want to work that way?
Yeah, so we've, with your ECP and patients, we've acknowledged that our customer is two-pronged. There's the patient side, obviously, and then the actual provider side. And of the providers that we've interviewed, like the NPs are the ones that find the most value in our proposition, because we would be able to basically give them a higher rate than what they're making now, but they're, this is like.
Why is that? When you say rate, what do you mean?
As far as like what they're making at like a normal clinic, like their wages, we're giving competitive higher wages.
And how do you do that?
So
they would be working for whom?
For us.
They work for you?
Yes,
Okay,
as
so-
independent contractors.
Okay.
So.
Which differs from Uber, right? Because the driver doesn't work for Uber. Uber just takes a cut of the fees. Which keeps Uber out of
Yeah.
trouble.
They would have to
because-
work for us because we would have to credential them under our.
So you would have to pay for their malpractice, you'd have
Correct.
to pay for everything for them. You wouldn't have a physical infrastructure, so I guess you would have some advantage there, I guess.
Sure. I mean, the thing is like the overhead cost is actually the credentialing and the prep work of all the legal stuff before the actual operation begins. So like this process, like it's about a 2 to 5 month long process to even get started, and then before we even open our doors, we're a couple $100,000 deep. So we're trying to I assume that if the pilot program is successful, like that killer experiment, that would be reason for the next round of funding to come in.
So what's the challenge here? In the app, anybody can write an app, right?
Yeah. Well, our value proposition is that one, we keep the cost a little lower because we're using NPs, not MDs. And two, we are on the back end. It's more than just a facilitation of an NP to you. I mean, we're having a database with like a patient portal, EHR. There are a few competitors out there, but again, we use MD model and they don't incorporate insurance. So we're working really hard right now to finalize insurance deals with providers.
Why don't they do that?
Because it's really hard. There's so much red tape. We almost were discouraged to go towards insurance too, but we find that everyone keeps asking about it. I'm sure our competitors are actively trying to figure out this puzzle piece, and whoever gets to it first is probably going to be the winner, let's say. But
Is it a technical problem?
Sorry. I mean, this is, I was just going to chime in because
Go ahead.
the closest analog to this probably that one hardware. So that's the model. The intermediate is like minute clinics, right? So minute clinics that show up in supermarkets, etc. Staffed by nurse practitioners. The convenience model for people that can't get basic appointments for things that they really need prescriptions for, right? Now they've got reimbursement, so they are now insurance covered. So I think that's something that's doable, various credentials.
And in Atlanta, we have a website that we can go to that gets a doctor to your door. It's mostly for children, for
And I know there's one out of
having
Long
pediatricians and having nurses come. And they will not deal with insurance. And that may be an attractive model for them not dealing with insurance. It's only self-pay.
right. I mean, so I mean, we're still honing down our customer discovery. It depends on honestly who you ask. Like some people with high deductibles or, children under 5, and they don't care. They're very price sensitive. Like whatever it takes, get a doctor to me or an NP to me. And then there's some people that, their copay is $20 and then they're willing to wait. And so it's like, what will compel them to use our product?
And where do you make your money?
Through so the reimbursements of the insurance. So what we're trying to do is, it's $150 that the patient pays. If their insurance covers it, or that works with us, it'll be $75. They get reimbursed $75, and then we have to get a portion of that reimbursement. If they don't, then that after we have the NP payout and keep whatever the rest is.
Okay. So the killer experiment, gosh, first I would wonder whether you could get a sufficient body of nurses together who are willing to do this versus just working in a hospital.
Right.
I think this would be a pretty attractive thing for them to do, wouldn't it?
I will, so the easiest portion of this, actually, of this whole process was figuring out the NPs, because we have the boards of the AANP and the CANP, the American and the Counseling Association, as presidents on our advisory board, and they, have talked to NPs for us, and we've also talked to NPs, and they're pretty much like, where can I sign up? When can I sign up? Like they find this value proposition very compelling. It's more the reach to the customers I'm most concerned about. We're still working on that.
So how small can you start?
Our pilot will
can you do a single practitioner?
So we allotted for a 12 NP, 3 MD team.
To start?
To start.
Wow, that sounds big.
Big? Okay.
Sounds huge.
The only reason why, because the thing is, because the credential process takes so long, we just wanted to get a team ready so that if we need to expand, then they're good to go. The moment we find this is successful, we're going to have to start another batch of NPs and MDs, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking what what is the quantum, essentially?
Right.
And what setting would you do that in? Could you go into a I don't know, pick either a large apartment building, or maybe a large business building, or maybe a large gated community,
Sure.
and start with a single practitioner? And start real small and figure out where the issues are, because 3 MDs and you said 9 and 12 NPs. That's a lot. That's a huge start without even knowing where the challenges are. Especially for some 3 MDs to drop their job and come do something risky like this, and 9 or 12 NPs before you really even know where the market or the challenge is. I'm just trying to think of a very controlled environment that you could go into and probably not even worry about insurance yet. People who would be really driven to having somebody either come to their workplace or come to their home, or even a school.
Yeah. Well, you mean school as in USC?
Something smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, something smaller, like a kind of a elementary school. Maybe one small enough that they don't have their own NP. I'm just trying to think of a much smaller setting that you could get the bugs worked out in and really start to understand, what the value is here. I would think that, the big value is not having to go anywhere to get a kid with that. Or to, even for an adult not having to miss work.
Yeah.
Would you do routine stuff, or is this only on demand?
This will be on demand. Yeah.
Something.
I mean, they can.
This is mostly just kind of sniffles, or you picture it to be something bigger than that.
Well, Yeah, for now it'll be primary care, like non-complex kind of what you would walk into to the clinic for. Not that you wouldn't need like a doctor out there. You know, like scripts and that sort of things of that nature, like vaccinations, STD testing, and whatnot. But you know, when we were interviewing the entities, we do ask for their specialty because you know I know that there will be a need for like a geriatric, maybe or pediatric, or you know, dermatology, whatever
So
it is.
you could have like a pediatric NP and have, you know, a couple of private schools that have the app.
Right.
And that would be a really small way to start. Or you could have a generalist and do a neighborhood. And at the same time, maybe start working through the insurance issues. But 15 professionals is a very large pilot. I would recommend starting slower, smaller, and understanding maybe one market at a time. You know, pediatrics, then maybe geriatrics, or just family medicine in a neighborhood, and get the bugs worked out before you know. You'd rather have a small failure of technology than a really large failure of technology. I'd say 15 people is that if something fails there, that's really big. So that affects a lot of people.
Would you be concerned at all, just my 2 cents, like talking about the Uber model, it actually was Sidecar was the original ride-sharing app, and they took a much slower approach, and Uber just saw the idea and commercialized it and marketed it, and now everyone uses Uber, and nobody talks about Sidecar. So, I mean, would you be concerned doing the slow approach that someone sees it,
Well,
says that's a good idea?
Are really screwing that up, you know, a ride sharing. You know, so if you go really big on that, had Uber really messed it up, they didn't. But had they really messed it up, it's just ride sharing. You know, this is healthcare. So the consequences of going too large and failing are a little, I think, require a little more contemplation. Would be my sense, and just the regulatory environment, because it's healthcare. You know, if you're going to get into any regulatory trouble, I'd rather have it with one practitioner than 15.
Well, I mean, I would argue that employment model, I would work it on. So there's a lot of people that work like 4 days on, 3 days off, working on their overcapacity, people's schedule, their time.
It'll be more like supplemental income.
So not like a full-time job. I wouldn't make the full-time commitment to it, but I'd say like, you let us know what days you're available, and I can book you some gigs on those days.
Yeah, that'd be a great,
That way-
just like the Uber thing. They can turn it off,
Yeah.
turn it off.
Offloaded any responsibility on salaries,
Yeah.
and let people populate, and they can be competitive. I guess they can even dig down their price if they want. They can say like, I'll go into this for 20.
Have you looked into the malpractice issue?
We are, so, yeah, we will have to provide the malpractice insurance for that piece.
And have you talked to a malpractice carrier?
Yeah, and we've got the pricing and everything, but
You
that
do.
happens it's the next step. We need to credential them, and then comes the malpractice insurance.
I'm just wondering what the malpractice carrier said. So
yeah.
how would they charge you? Would they charge you per professional?
Yeah.
So they charge for the pool. They don't charge per professional. So they charge for the pool. So one can come in, one can come out, but the fee is
They're
the
going
same.
to charge you for 12.
Right.
Exactly.
Is the charge for 12 any different for the charge for 50?
I think pricing goes down if you expand the pool, depending on what we ask for. So there's different things that they said. I just got the email today actually, but I don't remember the terms. So maybe somebody understands it better than I do.
So would they even insure one?
Yeah.
They would?
So they were talking about occurrence coverage and claims made coverage.
And claims made and occurrence. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that the killer experiment here is just much smaller. It's one practitioner.
Well,
And man, if you could figure out how to do use that to get the insurance figured out, that would be huge. I think, or maybe what you end up showing is that you just don't need the insurance. that people are just willing to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
Because they would be paying for it, you know, with as high as deductibles are now, you're gonna end up paying for it out of pocket anyways.
Yeah, you know, this thing has been like, you know, almost a year of discovery, and it changes, whoever you ask, it completely changes the answer. But we're seeing that people are leaning towards, I don't care. The people who do care, their policies that good, or whatever it is that they want to have at some point. But, you know, it's just one of those things where.
This is, you know, it's essentially concierge medicine.
Yeah, perfectly, it's perfect.
It's concierge medicine, I think, just call it. So how do you keep other people from doing this?
I mean, the thing is, because we chose the NP route, not the MD route, and our partnerships, we have, we're working on exclusivity with NPs that are affiliated with the AANP and the CNP. So hopefully people won't, because right now it'll be like a pricing difference, I suppose, like between NP and ND. And so when our compares wise up to the fact that people might like using NPs, we have like a block.
The biggest advantage is that we can expand quickly because not many MDs will work like that because they already get lots of money in their current job, so they will not. They don't even need to do that as a side. But the NPs, especially in some states, can work autonomously, and they can do whatever the MDs can do, and that's very important because they don't need supervision. They can
California
prescribe.
one of those states?
No, California is not. That's why we have a higher cost at this point, because we need to hire the MDs.
You have to have a supervisory MD.
But in other states,
But what's that relationship defined as?
4 to 1. Sorry.
Is there a legal definition to what supervisory role means?
yeah, basically they
Yes.
sign documents, and that's it. They don't need to be in the same geographic location. So there's a legal loophole, let's say, that we can have somebody in some location just filling out the forms and signing. That's it.
Signing what?
All the documentation that comes from the nurse practitioner visits.
Has to be signed.
Yes.
So all the SOAP notes, everything has to be signed by a doctor.
In California.
So where do you keep online?
Everything's online, digital.
Okay. Yeah, I think the test case is just one.
Okay.
So that if you fail, you're not, failing big. If something really goes wrong, or if you get in regulatory trouble, it's only for one. It's not for 15.
We'll have to for 2. It's NP.
Well, you gotta have an MD, right? Can that MD be a full-time employee somewhere else?
Yeah, no, we expect them to. We're not paying for them to come and work with us.
The problem is if you start the app and one NP doesn't work for that day because they're currently occupied at their job, then the app is unusable. That's why we need the 12 NPs to cover the hours that are left. Plus, we offer after-hour access. That's the whole point. After-hour access and scheduling.
I'd be surprised if you can't find somebody that, would do this full-time for a while. Especially if there's already independent practitioners out there. They're independent already.
Right.
All you would be doing is providing another patient.
I don't think the problem would be getting the NP recruitment. It's just how quickly to scale it. Also,
In Atlanta, you can only share just certain hours.
Right.
You can order it. It's not during the day.
Right.
So you'd only have to, that may be a nice model where everybody has to understand this is only, right now, this is only between the hours of 5:30 and 10:30 at night.
That's actually a good idea.
So you just constrain it right at the outset. I'd be surprised if an independent contractor doesn't say, yeah, I'll take one of these.
And to your point about starting small, one of the frustrating things about our competitors, and so we've downloaded all our competitors' apps in 10 locations, and I think they're doing that. They're starting too small, and so no one's ever available, and then they just lose the traction of whatever press that they receive.
Now, once you decide to actually launch it, you'll have to launch a lot bigger.
Right.
But, you know, I think it's really smart to just do a pilot, very small, to figure out where the issues are, so that you get those addressed before those become applied and multiplied through a much larger group.
I'm going to interrupt this just for a moment because I can see a few people are leaving, and I just wanted to review very briefly the two templates I sent out. So the first is the project plan and timeline. There's a legend on them. If you didn't notice, if you can stick to this, it's really helpful for the oversight committee reviewers because then they can quickly look at it. And this gray period is intended to be the funding period of our program, which runs from July 1 to June 30. These are quarters, so this is third quarter of 2015, fourth quarter of 2015. This is January 1 of 16, okay, first and second quarter. And so if there are important things that you want to mention that you've already finished, anytime before the start of the funding period, so you may have done this 2 years ago and this last year, it doesn't really matter, it's just any time before the funding. If there's some important validation or preliminary work that you've done, you know, your xenograph models or something like that, you just note that they were done. I used Daniele's as an example, and so she had done a clinical study of her sweat test probe on infants. She got a no-go design, no-go on that particular design because the babies squirm around and she couldn't hold the device on very well, so that design was no-go. So she's back looking at alternative probes and modifications, working with engineers, and then she's going to fabricate a new prototype, and she's going to repeat the study in infants to try to come up with a device that works well on moving babies. She has already validated in older kids and adults that the technology in terms of measuring sweat rate works. So, so that's basically her plan. And again, there's a legend. It's just to make it easier for the oversight committee because they're going to be looking at a lot of proposals. Purple and regulatory I do in, clinical and regulatory I had in purple, preclinical in blue. If you have any manufacturing or quality controls, I put those in orange. Technical stuff I put above the line and business and IP below the line. So if there's some important patent activities, you know, once you get your design, you know, you may at that time decide to file a provisional or what have you, or non-provisional. And then on here I have getting feedback from potential investors or other business development activities. And then this is the second, yes?
Sorry, can you, like, the star versus the triangle, does that mean anything different? Or is it color coded? It's just sort of a lesser milestone, It's just sort of a finite event, I guess. What's that? I have the approvals.
Yeah, this is a big pivot here.
Oh, so star is a pivot.
Or it could be a go. I mean, hopefully you guys will have some go. This one might say actually, you can put a star here and it'll be go, no go. You don't know yet. And then this you can translate into this milestone dashboard. And I took a stab at these. I think I got them pretty close for Daniele. So this is cycle 4. And we have teams that fund year over year, and we accumulate these milestones. So you might have some teams that are asking for second year funding might have milestone 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and then they're going to add 4.1. So that's why I've got them like that. You all get to at least start out green, because at the beginning you're not behind. And then there's a legend. So green is in progress. Yellow is delayed and red is incomplete. So the estimated date to finish I've got over here, and that I just read off the other timeline. Okay? And once it's completed, I'll change this to a yes. Okay? This doesn't change, but if she, if she tests 3 technologies and she's not able to get anything to work, or it's just taking an extra long time, it takes her twice as long, this might turn yellow. We might explain why, and then it just won't be complete on time. So, and then these are date stamped. Okay, so we'll ask you for an update probably 3 times throughout the funding period.
So we could go back on, so cycle 4.
Just back here.
What is the cycle?
Cycle 4 is our terminology, so this will be
Okay,
the
this is
fourth year of funding.
Cohort 4, okay.
Yes,
So
cohort
we're
4.
cohort 4.
We talked about year 1 and 2, and then some people were funded in year 2, but that was their year 1, and year 3, and everybody all muddled, so we'll just sort of stick to this terminology. Okay? So I just wanted to go over that before I noticed people starting to leave. Plus I think Steve, I need to take a bio break. Any questions about that?
So this is only for 1 year.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And I have, I do have some teams that keep coming back. So I have longer templates that go 2 or 3 years. But if you're, in the program for 3 years and you haven't gotten any nibbles yet, and well, Stephen's been to a lot of the schools. I think there have been successes or ones that have gone year over year, but a lot of them we like to see exit sooner. So I'm encouraging you to stick to this one. That's all we need for you guys. You guys are all new applicants. Okay? All right. So it's about 5:40. We're here till 6, and if you want to talk to Stephen more about your killer experiments, please do. Otherwise, thank you very much, Stephen.